Hello, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to bad animals. You probably haven't noticed it yet, but spring is here, so I thought now would be a great time to talk about all of the invasive species that America unleashed on Britain, starting with the plants. There's a good reason that when asked, what would you like to come back as after you die, nobody says the floating Pennywort. You would be absolutely gutted. I mean, look at it. It looks like a wannabe lily pad and a floating Pennywort. What does it think it is? A member of Hogwarts? Evidently America thinks so, because in 1990, long before Harry Potter was even on the bookshelves, it gave it to Britain. And that sounds nice, doesn't it? Here's a harmless gift for you all to enjoy. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, look at it. It's harmless, isn't it? Except that it grows 20 centimetres in a day, right? That's a lot, and it's so much that it's making me go high-pitched just thinking about it, because, that takes up a lot of the water, and it covers the sunlight from getting to the other aquatic animals, and they die and fall to the seabed. That might not be true. I haven't looked that up or seen it in action. And you know what? I know what you're thinking. I'd have the same advice too. I'd tell the fish, just swim around. But what if there's no room and they can't swim under it? What do you expect them to do? Just jump over the thing? I mean, I suppose some fish can jump out of water, but then they'd feel out of place. They'd feel like a fish out of water. But there is one ray of hope. The floating Pennywise, the Pennywort. The Pennywise is a clown, scary clown from It. They all float down here, Georgies. Clearly not just talking about the balloons. No, the Pennywort was banned from sale in 2014 in the United Kingdom. So I suppose at privately owned gardens, fish will no longer get lost in the pond. I had to do it. It was just lingering there in front of me. Thankfully, the same cannot be said about our next entry. Oh, the American skunk cabbage, as we know it in Britain, and as you may know it in the United States as the western skunk cabbage or the yellow skunk cabbage. And has any plant ever been so worthy of ridicule in its life? I mean, its chief defining qualities are that it looks like a cabbage and that it smells like a skunk. It's like the earth woke up one day and said, you know what, poison ivy doesn't have enough competition at the minute. Just put together the worst vegetable and the stinkiest mammal and let the good times roll. And that's what happened. And America knew this. It knew what an abomination the plant was, and it gave it to Britain in 1901. That was the year that Queen Victoria died. Commiserations, Britain. Here you go. Now, having been introduced to Britain in 1901, it really took off in the 1940s because, what else did it have to do? There was a war on. It wasn't going to fight. Though I can see how it would have been deployed in the Battle of Britain. But since those days, it's taken to bombarding local British wetlands where it's, outnumbering all of the other plant life and generally letting off some stinky farts. But while it's busy emitting, our next entry consumes. The pitcher plant might sound like a position in baseball, but it's actually quite a devastating little of a plant. In Britain, they're threatening bog communities, which I don't spend a lot of time there myself, but I can imagine that those that do are really annoyed about this. Because what it's doing is, it's reducing cover of the native plant species, and that can have a profound impact on peat formation. I bet you never thought I'd be discussing that with you today. I read that on Wikipedia, to be fair. But they eat insects. This is a plant that eats insects. They're kind of like miniature versions of that plant in Little Shop of Horrors. And the insects are a miniature Steve Martin, but don't know how to play the banjo. But they're swallowing European insects inside these bogs, which, that does sound filthy. And is the first entry on this list to impact actual animals. And speaking of animals, that brings us on to our final 4 entries. It's not basketball. Oh, the American mink is absolutely adorable until you read about them, because they are very carnivorous and they eat rodents, fish, crustaceans, frogs and birds. They eat actual ducks. I mean, so do I, to be fair, but I don't eat them raw from the river. Either way, it doesn't matter if we're talking about parks in the United States or in Britain, because in 1929, at the start of the Great Depression, go figure, they arrived in Britain initially, as part of fur farms, right? But then come the 1950s, after the war, because, you know, they're like the American skunk cabbage, they can just lie low and then breed. And they did. And they started breeding quite heavily from the 50s onward, you know, usually down to the fact that they'd been released on purpose by idiots, or they just escaped because they're quite wily. And as a nation, we're still paying reparations to the duck community. And the duck community, as well as anything else that lives in the British rivers and lakes and streams, has to cohabit with this. Jeremiah was a bullfrog, and he became American when he went over to Britain, because in Britain, the bullfrog, as you might know it here in the US, is known as the American bullfrog. So just to make it distinct from other bullfrogs in Britain, I don't know if we have any, maybe we do, but they're very weird looking creatures, aren't they? I mean, look at this one. It looks like a crocodile inside a centrifuge, you know, or the Gungan leader from the Phantom Menace, or Andrew Lloyd Webber. And believe it or not, this amphibian is a very, very harmful invasive species. But, you know, not only does it prey night and day on prey, it carries disease as well, and other animals will catch that disease and die, mostly amphibians, and that's why there's been a decline since their introduction from the United States to Britain. American bullfrogs have been known in the UK to be people's pets, and those people, very irresponsibly, just like with American minks, have been letting them out deliberately, and that's just causing all manner of problems for the likes of, I don't know, toads, turtles. It's not clear what amphibians they are menacing, but it can't be good for those people. They're animals, not people. Although people are animals, so it comes full circle. The circle of life. We could do a whole Lion King episode, but it would be pointless because we don't have lions roaming the streets of Britain anymore. Something that is roaming the streets of Britain is this street. I don't think that's true. You guessed it, the signal crayfish. Who's heard of that? I hadn't until I started researching this video. Turns out the signal crayfish is resident usually to the Pacific Northwest and parts of Canada, and also California too. So basically the west coast of North America. And Europe, lots of Europe it looks like, because, and this is to speak to Britain, in 1975 America introduced it there. And like all of these, it started so innocently at first, right? They were shipped over there to be farmed for food. And then they escaped because, of course they did. They've got really scary claws. And just got out and started terrorising or, you know, hurting the populations of other crayfish in Britain. I don't know much about the crayfish population in Britain, but I do know that it's dwindled since 1975. The worst outcome, though, was for the white-clawed crayfish, who was driven to extinction by this inconsiderate How did it do that? Well, it was carrying, you know, the sort of crayfish version of the plague, and thankfully for it was immune to the plague. The same cannot be said about the white-clawed crayfish, who subsequently stopped happening. And in this respect, and this respect alone, it bears a striking resemblance to our final entry. I hope that transition didn't confuse anyone. I'm not trying to suggest that crayfish and squirrels look the same. That would be hideous. What I am saying is disease, lots of it. I know that sounds really cheery. Here's the story, right? In Britain, there are two types of history. There's post-World War II and pre-World War II. That's about it. And a load of royal stuff going way back centuries, but we don't talk about that. We talk endlessly. Anyway, never mind. Before World War II, in the 1870s, grey squirrels were introduced to Britain from the United States just as sort of fashionable additions to estates, to wealthy estates, right? And it all seemed fine. It was like, oh, good, we have this really cute animal in our garden that we can gawk at, and what can possibly go wrong, right? It's not like they can escape up these conveniently high trees or anything like that, except they did. And this was not good for another type of squirrel, chiefly the red squirrel. Americans, do you like how I say squirrel, by the way? Don't answer that. Basically, before World War II, red squirrels ruled the land, okay? They were even in charge of our government. It was like a Beatrix Potter book in Britain before then. Just don't fact check me on that. And they were everywhere. You'd find red squirrels in most quarters of Britain. In fact, the United Kingdom as a whole, if you include Ireland. And then from the 1940s onward, you saw a decrease in the red and an increase in the grey. And no, I'm not talking about my bank account. And that's because, just like the signal crayfish, grey squirrels carry disease. and they're immune to it. Do you know who's not immune to it? I'll give you a clue, right? They're squirrels and they're red. Red squirrels. I think you probably got that already. And not only do grey squirrels carry disease, they're also capable of carrying more food, so they survive better in the winter. And they're taking all of the food from the squirrels. It's really greedy, right? It's sort of like what my cat used to do to my other cat, just kick him out of the way when it was feeding time. So, you know, from the comfort of your bunker, when you look out of your window and you see a grey squirrel just throwing nuts down onto the ground, don't just think, oh, that's adorable. Have a little thought for those red little buggers across the pond. That's it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. Let me know which is your favourite invasive species. That's not a question I ever thought I'd ask. I do talk about animals every now and again on Twitter, so if you would like some animal facts or just British versus American differences, why not follow me there at Lost in the Pond US. And of course, as ever, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that my videos don't get lost in the pond. That's a no-brainer, especially as we're all quarantined. You need to have something to do, and I'm the entertainment. And a floating Pennywort size thank you to all of my patrons, particularly my new patrons who have been joining me in droves recently. Thank you for that. It really helps this channel to keep growing and to keep its head above water, unlike some of those fish. Right, if you would like to become a patron of Lost in the Pond, you can do so at patreon.com/lostinthepond. Anybody that does so will get access to my secret live stream, and anyone who pledges $5 or more a month will get access to not just that, but my secret podcast, which, you know, I put out sort of once a month. So go there now. It takes about 5 minutes to sign up. You won't regret it. And even if you do, red squirrels are cute. That's it. Bye. I'll see you soon. Thank you for watching this episode of Lost in the Pond. Don't forget to hit my stupid little face to subscribe, and please share this video with the world. Hit me up on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and if you would like to support this channel, please do so at patreon.com/lostinthepond.